streets inundated with gifts and good wishes for men and horses, the Blues and Royals were back on the streets of London, to warm applause as they walked on, eyes front, past the scene of Tuesday's IRA outrage. Their standard was blood-stained and torn. It has been washed, it will be repaired.
Comes these arrests of people who were cleared as on the runs. A man called Michael Burns, who's very ill, was arrested, and John Downey yesterday charged in London. Now, both those individuals had benefited from a scheme which the government had put in place to resolve the anomaly of people who, if they had been sentenced, would have benefited from the early release Good Friday Agreement. So they would only serve 2 years. Most of those, there were about 150 perhaps Republicans, but most of those were just victims of harassment. You know, there was no evidence against them of any offence whatsoever. Some of them clearly were facing charges, some of them were escapees, some of them had jumped bail, and so on. And all of those were resolved, and we had a very ongoing, tedious process with the British and Irish governments to sort that out. It was also subject of a very firm commitment by both governments in a joint governmental statement after Weston Park, where they committed to resolving this anomaly. They publicly said that they were not pursuing extradition proceedings against people who at that time may have been sought for extradition. So this is a complete breach of all of that. It's, you know, I'm very mindful that the charge is a serious charge, but you know, and you always have to be mindful that all of this just creates problems for victims. It also creates problems for the Downey family. I mean, John is a very valued member of Sinn Féin, very, very active, worked with the Gardaí, former members of the Guards, former members of the Irish Army, worked with Loyalists. Was very, I mean, I spoke to him myself at Easter, just up in Drumbo at the Easter commemoration. So, you know, he's a good guy, but that's immaterial. The fact is, he is an OTR who was told that he was not wanted in any charges.
Thanks, John. A former IRA member suspected of the murders of 4 British soldiers in the 1982 Hyde Park bombing has walked free after the case against him collapsed. Charges were thrown out after it emerged that John Downey had been given a written assurance by the government that he wouldn't face prosecution. The Northern Ireland Police Service said it accepted full responsibility for the failures which led to today's ruling. The families of the 4 British soldiers who died said they felt devastatingly let down. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Simon Israel.
On the 20th of July 1982, 16 members of the Blues and Royals Regiment of the Horse Guards Cavalry were en route mid-morning for the changing of the guard. They were blown apart by a car bomb, high explosive, with nails as shrapnel. 4 died, 31 injured, and 7 horses had to be destroyed. This was a photo fit published a year later of the suspected bomber described as most wanted. And this was the man, John Downey, now 62, who last week was in the Old Bailey to hear that he would no longer be standing trial. Why? Because of a letter amounting to a written assurance from the Northern Ireland Secretary and the Attorney General in 2007 that he would not be prosecuted. It was one of 187 sent to Republican sympathisers classified as on the runs following the Good Friday Agreement. The crucial paragraph contained these words: "The police service of Northern Ireland is not aware of any interest in you from any other police force in the UK." But Downey had remained on the Met's wanted list for 14 years prior to the letter being issued. The PSNI had simply not passed on that information. There were 3 chances to put it right. The first was in 2007, before the letter was sent, but officers failed to tell the Director of Public Prosecutions that Downey was wanted by the Met. The second was in 2008, after the letter was sent, having realised the error, but the force still failed to tell the DPP. And the last, a year later, in 2009, when it accepted Downey was wanted, but did nothing again. So his arrest at Gatwick last year presented the government with an extremely serious matter, both politically and legally.
John Downey's release from trial leaves this act of devastation without conviction. This memorial stands in honour of those who were killed and injured. But their families have never and will never get justice. The politics of peace have taken that away.
Lieutenant Anthony Daly is one name on that plaque. His brother Christopher had hoped, at last, someone would be held accountable for the murder. But he and the other families are now left with no hope and bitter disappointment.
How painful is this? You can't measure it. I think this initial wound started 32 years ago, and this process has raised it up again, has reopened it right to the very core. And I know that the families, are deeply, deeply upset and also deeply, deeply angry because they don't understand how such an error could not be initially admitted and then corrected.
The families are not asking for much. They accept justice has eluded them. Today they received not one, but 3 apologies from the current Chief Constable, the Northern Ireland Minister, and the man in charge of police at the time. Sir Hugh Orde said it was a matter of great personal regret that a senior officer made a crucial oversight. The families will have to wait and see if a fuller explanation is forthcoming.
Well, today is wake-up day for them, because we are here to let them know that the vast majority of the people of this United Kingdom support us.